Today on T-Mon's Garage, we're going to be moving the front half of the engine. We're going to be doing the harmonic balancer or the crank pulley. We're going to be doing timing cover, the timing chain or the timing gear, the oil pan, the oil pump pickup, and the camshaft. So next, we're going to remove the harmonic balancer. It's 24 millimeter. I'm using an electric impact gun. The other way you could do it is, manually do it, is if you could lock or hold the flex plate in place. Well, that didn't work. Okay, so half-inch breaker bar, and I've got another bar shoved into there, into the harmonic balancer that's supported. And it's going. There you go. And you think that was the hard part? Wait until the next part. I'm D, and this is T-Mon's Garage. So unfortunately, I hadn't realized that the camera had run out of batteries. What I ended up using, there's a specialty tool for taking off the harmonic balancers. I don't own one. I used what's known as a gear puller. You can pick these up relatively inexpensively. This one's either from Harbor Freight or something else. It's not a high-end tool. And all it does is there's little flats in behind. It's on the back of here. And you can just put these teeth, and then I have a spacer that fits on here, and I just tightened up the screw and it pulls it right out. Next, we're gonna pull the timing chain cover. And then there's two underneath that need to get pulled. Piece comes off, and so does the gasket. You don't want to tug on this too hard, because like I said, if you can reuse these, you want to. And even if you don't reuse them, you can always clean them up and throw them on the pile in case you do end up needing them. In this case, there's a little bit of crud down in here. It's well baked on, just dirt and general grime. All that stuff will get cleaned up too, and we'll go from there. And in this case, this gasket ripped, and it left part of the rubber there, which is all dried out and nasty, so that gasket's definitely shot. But like I said, I don't tend to reuse them, but I can tend to keep these ones, if they're still in good shape, sitting on the side, so in case I do end up needing one in an emergency. So looking at the front of the motor, this is the oil pump. This is the cam gear. Behind the oil pump is the crank gear. Another thing is, it's real common for there to be a lot of slop in these gears, which never made a whole lot of sense to me, but it is what it is. Okay, the next we're going to remove the oil pan. There's 6 bolts on each side. You need to remove this bolt right here, which is a 10 millimeter. All the bolts on it are all 10 millimeter on the oil pan. Otherwise, you won't be able to get to a bolt. So there's 5 here, and then there's 1 up underneath, and the same thing on the other side. Also, as a note, I'm going to leave the center bolt in place, but loose, so when I take the other ones out, all the weight's not hanging on those bolts and it's not jamming up. Although the gasket might hold it, I wouldn't guarantee it.
Oh, we're draining the oil.
Oil's already been drained out. Now we're down to 1 on each side. You're gonna wanna pull them out, but do it slowly. These oil pans tend to be a little bit on the heavy side, even though they're aluminum, mostly just because of the position that you're in. The backs are also the heavier part just because of the way they sit, and the fact that the sump is back there, so you actually have more material back there. Now we'll take a look to see what's in the pan and what kind of condition everything's in. What I did was I removed the baffle pan. It's 4 10 millimeter bolts, and we have a lot of gunk, just general nastiness in the bottom of this pan. It's mostly just dried caked oils and dirt and stuff. I'm not seeing any heavy metal particles, but obviously you're at this point, you're going to want to just clean all this crap out anyhow. I'm not seeing anything really bad other than the fact that there's just a lot of gunk in the bottom of the pan. A little bit of water, but that could be from the junkyard. Seeing any metal flakes or anything. Next, we're going to remove the pickup tube. There's a bolt here and a bolt here. This other bolt holds on the windage tray. The purpose of the windage tray is as the crank spins that it doesn't force it to pull oil out of the oil pan, and it allows the oil to travel down easily. Because when the crank is spinning, because of the shape of the oil pan, it can create a vacuum and suck the oil up and then whip it into the air and aerate it. And aerated oil does not have the same lubrication properties as non-aerated oil. And there's another bolt right here that holds on this. That's the truck motor. Some of these pickup, or you may need to change the pickup for your application for clearance, but you're the only one that's going to be able to figure that out. You can usually find out by doing some research. The other thing is the O-ring. In this case, it actually stayed in the block. These are one of those things that you always want to replace if you're down in here, because what happens is they get square and they dry out. And what happens is from this vibrating, they get loose. It'll start sucking air in, and then it won't be sucking the full amount of oil in. Also one of those things that's not a good thing. Next, we're going to remove the oil pump. This is the timing chain, this is the crank, this is cam gear, crank gear. On these, what you have to do to remove them is you have to take these 3 bolts. And then just kind of wiggle this and it'll come off, and then you can pull that off. The next thing to do is, if you're going this far, you might as well check the cam bearings. So you're going to pull this. You are going to have to replace the cam retainer plate because there's a gasket on these and there's no really reusing them. They're only a couple of bucks. So you might as well replace them, because if these leak, you'll never know it, and you'll have an internal leak and it'll cause an oil pressure problem and you'll never know about it. When you get these, when you get a new one of these, it comes with new bolts generally. Use the new bolts. You don't reuse the old one. What happens is, if you look on here, this red ring, this is your gasket, they get crushed over time. So there's really no reusing those. Okay, so next we're going to remove the camshaft. In this case, I have a really long 1/2-inch extension, and you're going to use it as leverage. You're going to push down, you're going to kind of wiggle it. You can stick your fingers in through the back port to help, and then you need to go slow because you need to clear each cam bearing as you do it. And as you get farther out, you'll have the cam to actually port yourself. And like I said, go slow, because you can nick up the bushings. Okay, so we pulled the cam bearings. If you look, there's a lot of carbon and discoloration on the top. That's actually grit. And where you can see the brass there, it's discolored. That's pretty well worn. At this point, it's a pretty good thing that we actually ended up pulling these. And they said you can actually scratch. That's well baked on, you know, but you can scratch it off. So it means that cam had a lot of clearance, and the other ones aren't much better. Look, you kind of see it there. Discolored too. In the next episode, we're going to be digging into its guts. We're going to get into the connecting rods and the crank. We're going to check those bearings for clearances and condition, and then we're going to pull the pistons and the connecting rods. We're also going to pull the back cover and the crank.